West Coast, the East Coast, and deep in the heart of Texas, it's the Geek at Arms podcast with Brian, Mike, and James.
Greetings, everyone. Welcome to the latest episode of the Geek at Arms podcast, a podcast camped squarely at the crossroads of geek culture and Christian faith. I'm James, and with me, as always, are my buds, Mike and Brian. Brian, how are you doing today, my friend?
Fair. I've got some foot pain today, but other than that, I'm doing pretty good. Glad to be here.
Mike, are you alive?
I am alive. I've never been so happy to be alive. So I'm happy to be recording with you folks. So that's great.
Glad to hear it.
What about you, James? How you doing?
Slightly exhausted. I was up very, very late last night. A gentleman who I work with, he produces a show from 9 till midnight. I got the call last night at 6 o'clock saying, hey, did you have any plans tonight? I'm like, no, what's on? He's like, this other guy, he just tested positive for COVID.
Oh, jeez.
Can you fill in for him tonight? I'm like, yeah, I can. So my evening kind of got shot, and I was at work, and because of that, was up way later than I should have been. But that's just what happens sometimes. You're up late, and even though I came home and I was tired, by the time I did get home, I hadn't gotten my second wind. I had gotten like my third wind. So I played little video games, read a little bit, and finally crashed. I don't know at what time, and woke up and just not enough sleep. But I've got a much larger than I should have Dr. Pepper next to me, and I'm ready to go.
So if we hear snoring on one of the tracks, we know it's not an audio issue. It's coming from James's track.
My head is resting comfortably on my mic sock, and you guys can just take it away from there.
Just imagine you hear from the track, like, should we just let him sleep and come back about an hour later?
It's the most cerebral, weird, but also comforting episode of Geek at Arms anyone's ever heard. Mike talks in soothing tones while Brian puts on some lullaby music.
And we'll find out if James talks in his sleep and whether or not that can get more clicks than our standard episode.
I can't even imagine where our conversation would wander if Mike and I just had to fill an hour vamping.
I do. You'd probably be discussing Mike's new PC and getting into specs and stuff, and that would lead me to have some really weird dreams because I would be absorbing it through my headphones.
Well, I remember the first time that we had just a long time to chat with each other, waiting on you for some, I don't remember for what reason, but we wound up with Codswallop and Poppycock.
The hours of recording that never make it to the internet are just...
Sometimes I have the urge to just post one of our episodes completely raw, unedited.
Oh, no.
It would be like 3.5 hours long for one thing, but also the audio editor in me cringes badly at the idea of doing that. But before we have any more cringe, let's head into Geek Out. I'll go first. I've got a few things to talk about. When to go see Spider-Man No Way Home.
No way.
I'm assuming from the reactions, Mike, you have not seen it, but Brian, you have.
I have.
You are incorrect, sir.
Oh, you've seen it?
I did see it as soon as I had some vacation time coming. This was shortly before the holidays. I found a theater that had like an early showing. Mm-hmm. And got a ticket, and it was like me and Kaja and like two other people in three different corners of the theater.
Cool. Best way to see a movie. So I'll try to keep the review as spoiler-free as possible, but, it has been out.
I mean, I think you're safe at this point. You can,
yeah, seriously.
Yeah, Spider-Man does find a way home.
Yes.
There you go. Both of them.
So Spider-Man movies I've been okay with, but they've never been my favorite. The Spider-Mans with Tobey Maguire, I thought they were okay.
I liked them.
I thought number 2 was obviously the best. I think most people are with me on that. Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man, I've watched both of them. Technically, I fell asleep both times.
I watched the first one. Okay, the first Andrew Garfield one I think had the disadvantage of it being yet another origin story when we've just had the Spider-Man origin story. I don't feel like we needed that. Like, yeah, you got bit by a spider. Let's move on to the lizard
We've
punchy
got
stuff.
it.
To the point that Into the Spider-Verse made fun of the thing.
Yes.
Oh, I thought that was brilliant.
That was a wonderful take. That's exactly what was needed. I've really enjoyed Tom Holland. I especially liked how they brought him into the MCU. We know who he is. We know his story. They skipped all that and brought him straight in, and of course, leave it to Robert Downey Jr.'s Iron Man to just basically bum rush through all of that and bring him in fully formed as a costume superhero. Just, you have a passport? No, I'm 60. Have you ever been to Germany? What are you talking about? Oh, it's great. You're going to love it. So I've enjoyed the Tom Holland movies. I've enjoyed them the most out of any of the Spider-Mans. But I went into No Way Home with, frankly, low expectations because I knew all the hype that was going into it. It was going to deal with the multiverse. Doctor Strange was going to be in it, and some Spider-Man villains from other movies. And I thought, it's going to be really good. I'm sure it is. It's a Marvel movie, and they're not going to skimp on one of their hottest properties. Like, I saw Eternals. I talked about it in an earlier episode. I thought, okay, this was an okay Marvel movie. It's the okayest Marvel movie yet.
I saw it recently too and thought the same thing.
It wasn't bad. It had some good parts, but overall, just that was nice. That was nice. That was the most beige Marvel movie we've had yet.
But just because it was set in a desert most of the time.
Yes, in both color and mood. So while I knew this movie would probably be good, while it would certainly be good, it wouldn't be as good as it could have been. It couldn't reach those expectations that people have set for it. Boy, was I wrong. I was utterly, completely, and happily wrong. The way that it folded in the past villains and the way that they introduced the past Spider-Mans. Oh, cool, they brought back Andrew Garfield. That's really awesome. I really enjoyed how they did so. Have you got the tingle? I've got the tingle. Well, why isn't it working? I don't need it for bread. that was great. But then we see Tobey Maguire's Peter Parker. And the way that he and Andrew Garfield effortlessly stepped back into those roles was wonderful to see. And the fact that they were actually there. I mean, I'm really impressed by the way that Marvel was so tight-lipped about it.
Mm-hmm.
Even to the point where, like, the actors were just straight up lying. Oh no, we're not. We're not in it. We're not in it. Sorry, everyone. You know, we haven't been approached. It would be so cool. I'm like, wow, y'all need to repent.
Now, they did a better job keeping a lid on that than J.J. Abrams did on Khan.
Absolutely, yeah. We knew it. They knew it. They knew we knew it. Yeah, we're a knowledgeable fan base. I've made that joke before. This movie hit every single emotional point that I hoped that it would. And it hit more that I never saw coming. Thinking back, I'm still unpacking it. I was reacting not to what was happening on the screen, but I was reacting to the audience. In the last fight, and MJ is knocked off the building. Peter dives after her. He gets tackled by the Green Goblin. We'll get to that in a moment. It's a slow motion fall, and I heard the whole audience gasp. I'm like, what's going on? And then you see Andrew Garfield yell, no, and dive after her. And everyone around me started applauding and cheering. And I'm pretty sure I even heard a couple of people crying. I'm like, okay, having fallen asleep in the Andrew Garfield movies, I have missed some context. I went back and I looked. And I saw on YouTube the moment that this was mimicking. And wow, this really... Okay, now I see why he was so emotional about it, why the audience was so emotional about it, and why this is such a major emotional point, and why is my face red? Why am I crying now?
Well, it's interesting. I had known a bit about Gwen, not so much because I was watching the Andrew Garfield movies. I'm going back and watching them now after seeing him in No Way Home. But I had some friends that were talking about differences in comic book lore and differences in, I think they mentioned something about movie lore and how Gwen had died, you know, in this representation versus that representation. But it's, you know, a matter of her falling to her death. And they mentioned it in brief. Like I think he said something to the effect that he had somebody who was important to him and he couldn't save her and he lost her. And I'm like, oh yeah, you did that, didn't you? Okay, so that happened in the Garfield movies. Okay, cool. I'm up to speed.
Yeah.
And then that end scene made sense.
Yeah, the scenes mirror each other as well, as far as the cinematography and the effects used.
That I did not know.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but I really want a Spider-Gwen movie now.
I think we all do, especially after Into the Spider-Verse.
Okay, fair
Yeah,
enough.
it would not surprise me if that's in the pipeline somewhere.
Mm-hmm. Seeing those three Spider-Mans together was absolutely wonderful. The lab scene was everything that I never knew I wanted.
Mm-hmm.
It was exactly the tone that was needed for this movie. It was heartfelt, funny, it was earnest. It was a wonderful moment, these three working together. And I liked it because people tend to gloss over the fact that Spider-Man in the comics, Peter Parker is smart. He's very smart. And that has never really come up much in the movies. And I'm glad that that was highlighted, even just for a moment. I could talk a lot about the Spider-Mans themselves, but I want to also move on to the villains.
Let's talk about William Dafoe like a lot.
A lot. Holy cow. I also love the fact that he's in his, 60s right now? And
Yeah, he's up there.
yeah, he is, born 1955. So he agreed to do this movie with the understanding that he wanted to do all his own stunts.
What?
Yes, he
Well,
wanted
I don't
to do
think
it.
he wanted to do all of his own stunts. He said he wanted to be part of the action scenes.
Okay, well, something to that effect. Maybe not.
He didn't want to be a cameo.
Jumping around. He didn't want to be jumping around and like on the glider, maybe. But like the fighting scenes in the hallways and more, he wanted to be a physical part of that because he said there's a lot there that he could do, which wouldn't translate well if it was with a stunt double.
Okay,
And
I mean,
see him in the fights, and it's him, and he's beating the tar out of Spider-Man. Spider-Man's beating the tar out of him, and he's smiling, he's cackling. I mean, Joker who? This guy is wonderful. It is manic, psychotic, and it was wonderful to watch. Along with not missing a step, William Dafoe, I mean, he just about dang stole this movie.
I mean, look, point to somebody and say they nearly stole this movie because the performances were really top notch, especially the villains. Dafoe, not only did he just really become the Green Goblin, no makeup, no mask necessary, like he just became it. He also very well became a person who was desperate and who was plagued by his mental health and who knew he was plagued by his mental health and wanted help, but the Goblin didn't. And it's more than once I've been with that person and watching them struggle, like have that moment of clarity, like, wait, no, that's not what I mean. And it was eerily similar. Like he just did an incredible job.
There were several moments I really thought that they were going to take the character in a different direction than the others have. When he's sitting in that soup kitchen and he's talking with May, and he's like, I don't know what's going on. Someone else is living in my house. My company is gone, and my son. And his eyes go vacant, and he trails off. I'm like, okay, interesting. I don't know where they're going with this, but I really like it. And I really, once again, Dafoe really enjoyed the way he played it.
Yeah.
So speaking of villains, I didn't have like a big checklist for things I wanted to see in this movie. I really hoped I would see the Spider-Mans. I hope we would see some good banter back and forth between Spider-Man and crew and Doctor Strange, and I got that in spades. I knew Dr. Octavius was going to be in this movie. Shout out to Alfred Molina. I absolutely love him. He has been my favorite Spider-Man villain so far in all of the movies. And my hope, my desire for this one was that we got to see him redeemed, and that we got to see him saved.
I think we got to see him restored.
Restored, yeah, that's a good way of putting it, because I always viewed him as a tragic villain, because I never really saw him as a bad person. He had his sins. He had pride, he had drive, he had an incredibly strong desire to succeed and to be seen succeeding and to be recognized for his accomplishments. But I mean, shoot, which of us haven't had that desire? Unfortunately, the device that he had attached to himself, once it went out of control, it amplified those desires to unhealthy and toxic levels. And thus we get the villainous Doc Ock. And to see the new chip put into him, to see him come back was what I wanted, is what I needed to see. And I'm so glad that that became a central part of the movie. And I also I was about beside myself in laughter when Spider-Man's controlling his octopus arms.
Okay, that was amazing.
Device paired.
Now, that was the most unbelievable thing, because I've had Bluetooth devices and they never pair that easy. It's like, no, I got to hold like 4 buttons at the same time for 10 seconds and wait for the lights to flash.
The one thing that I do
It's
have
Star Tech. Remember, it's all made of hand wavium.
Right.
I mean, right. One thing I really have to give props to this movie for is that they're exploring trauma in healing, not just from the superhero perspective, but also from the supervillain perspective.
Yeah.
And to see those held in parallel was really fascinating.
And to see what the breaking points for those characters were, where how much of a push does it take to get Electro to say, oh, no, never mind?
Mm-hmm.
How much of a push does it take to bring Doc Ock to the point where he's willing to entertain the notion of not being the villain anymore? Locating those pressure points, I think, was a really interesting bit of storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The concept of sacrifice, especially self-sacrifice, has been prevalent throughout Spider-Man stories throughout the years. And this one it really focused on that. It seems like he's had to sacrifice so much of his life to the superhero act. His time, his energy, his health, and his identity. Everyone knows who he is now, and now he's having to do it again, except in reverse, because now everyone only knows Spider-Man. Peter Parker is gone.
Which I'm okay if the next movie is nobody knows Peter Parker, and now all they're doing is following MJ and Ned around Cambridge when they're at MIT, because that's just, hey, oh, I can see my house from there. Oh my gosh, I know that place. Oh, that's my neighborhood. Yeah, go MJ, go Ned.
Joking aside, I mean,
I'm never
Disney,
putting my joking aside.
You've made weirder stuff. Give us an MJ and Ned TV show at MIT where we occasionally will see glimpses of Spider-Man.
Ooh, and it can cross over with the Wu and Darcy show.
Yes. How great would that be?
I am so on board with this right now.
Now we're all just thinking about how great that show would be.
Come on, Disney. You're throwing money around at weird stuff. Make a Disney Plus show about this. Just get it done.
It's like, oh my gosh, that building is crumbling apart. Spider-Man saved them. Oh, no, that actually is an MIT building. Okay, it just looks like it was crumpled and put on the side of the road. Okay,
no,
weird
no.
design.
It always looks like that. It's fine. What building? It's a dorm.
It's on Vassar Street.
Kate Bishop did that.
Yeah.
It's on Vassar Street. It's one of the MIT. It has classrooms and lecture halls in it. I've been in there. It's cool. It's weird. But looking at it from the side of the road, it's like, what happened to you?
Well, before this becomes the Spider-Man No Way Home episode, I'm
okay with that.
Yeah, I am too. Let me move on with my geek out. As we said in the last episode, we just had a lot of really great fantasy and genre TV shows come our way, and we almost got overloaded with them. But season 2 of The Witcher has come and gone. Like season 1 was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed where they're taking the story. They've made a lot of changes as far as some of the design and look in this season, and for the most part, it's for the better, much improved. Either because they fired the last guy in charge of props or they started listening to fans. Either way, it's been good. A couple of moments were like, why are you doing that? But, no season is going to be perfect. We could also talk about that with the Wheel of Time TV show, but before we get to that, Brian, Um, let me bring up the next part of my geek out is that I took my daughter to go see the latest offering from Disney, the movie Encanto. And if you guys have not seen it yet, it's now on Disney Plus. I think it's just about my favorite Disney cartoon that has come out in the last several years. Period. It is wonderful.
I'm not huge on Disney films. I'm
Okay.
I'm gonna like, to me, generally they're at best they're cute and they're charming. This one had some really interesting dynamics there. I mean, dealing with
Mhm.
generational trauma and processing, who they are in response to that
Mhm.
previous trauma is
Without
fascinating.
and not doing it in a heavy-handed way either, which is kind of, Disney cartoons part and parcel. But
Yeah.
dealing with the concepts of duty, of grief, of forgiveness, there was a lot that could be unpacked from this movie.
Oh yeah.
And all set to a beautiful backdrop of scenery, costuming, and the music. The music was phenomenal, mostly because the driving force behind it all was, of course, Lin-Manuel Miranda of Hamilton fame.
He did a good job.
Yes, he did. One thing that I loved especially was most, not all, especially not these last several years, but a lot of Disney films have had like a central villain, a central bad guy, whether it's a person, a magical entity, a supernatural force, something that is acting as the antagonist. I loved the misdirect that this movie pulled off as far as who you expected that person to be.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to give too much away since Brian has not seen it, question mark.
No, I have not.
Okay.
I don't say this about Disney films. This one is worth watching. Do
Yeah.
I think it's a phenomenal film? Do I think it's the height of film craft? No, but they do some very interesting things with the film that I think is worth watching if you're not doing anything else with like
Mhm.
an hour and a half, 2 hours.
There will be times we've watched it several times, and I've been okay with it because I've really enjoyed it. And I will look at one of my kids and say, "Hey, we don't talk about Bruno."
One thing that's also really amusing is, okay, Brian, are you familiar at all with the premise of the show?
And no, I don't know a thing about it.
Okay, so there's this family, and they are fleeing. At least a husband
mother.
and wife are
Yeah.
the mother and her husband are fleeing from some sort of militaristic, or they're going to get killed. The husband walks away from the mother and manages to distract or delay these murderous people, and in that moment a miracle happens. The father isn't saved, but the mother is given a magical power, and she creates a safe haven, and all of her children and her grandchildren, and one may presume their great grandchildren, have some magical power, except for one person. And so they're dealing with the potential threat of the loss of their magical powers, and the loss of their home, and the loss of the community that they have worked so hard to build, and dealing with the problem of the potential loss of magic, and also dealing with everybody's place in the community if they don't have their magic.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things I thought was absolutely fantastic, this is kind of outside the plot, Louisa is the child who is super, super, super strong. She's just a brick. And they did not make enough toys of her because they thought, well, what little girl is going to want to play with the brick?
Yeah.
Apparently,
She's
all the
sister.
little girls want to play with the brick, and there's not enough bricks.
There are two sisters, Luisa and Isabella. Isabella is like the perfect child. She creates flowers. That's her magical ability. She creates flowers and plants. She's beautiful. I mean, everywhere she goes, beautiful roses follow in her wake. They thought, this is who all the girls are going to want. We're going to make a ton of toys. That's not what the kids are buying. They're buying Luisa, who is just this giant powerhouse of a woman. And I'm sure somewhere there's a play set of her and like 10 donkeys that she has stacked on her shoulders.
Oh my gosh, that would have been like the perfect game tie-in for this movie. Is stacking and like animal upon animal, except officially
Yes!
licensed, and it's Louisa and the donkeys. I mean,
it's a big Louisa amiibo and a bunch of donkeys that you stack on top of her. Disney, you can send our portion of the sales to James, Brand, and Mike at geekyarms.com.
We take PayPal.
So if you're looking for a good hour and a half to kill, and you don't mind a couple of songs getting stuck in your head, but in a good way, go check out Encanto. I can't say enough good things about it. And for the last part of my Geek Out, which is going to mesh with quite a bit of Brian's Geek Out, speaking of finished TV seasons, we got to watch all of the first season of The Wheel of Time. And
Yes.
Oh, that finale.
it was definitely something.
I didn't see it. I was just trying to feel included.
The finale had me going, huh, and huh. Okay. Brian, you and I have already talked at length about the season off podcast. And I keep coming back to one thing. It was, 8 episodes long?
I think so, yeah.
It really needed to be 12.
Totally agree.
I would have even compromised with 10, but
Even that would have been cramped, yeah.
most of my complaints could have been dealt with if we had more time to flesh out the world, especially more time for us to get to know these people. Because I felt like that was the biggest crime of this season, that these people who the plot is about them. It revolves around them, but I felt like some of them just got so little screen time. We get a bit about who they are and their personalities, but it's just not enough. Not for what is supposed to be the building blocks, the foundation of the show, and make you care about these people. And I read that the producer behind it, the gentleman who's the driving force, wanted 10 episodes, but he was told get it done in 8. To which I'm like, what's wrong, Amazon? Did you lose some Prime subscribers? Could you not throw him the cash for 2 more? Seriously?
Well, hopefully that budget will be reflected in Lord of the Rings.
Complete total rabbit trail. But have you guys seen the latest teaser trailer for that?
I was trying so hard not to, and then I saw somebody posting about the behind the scenes, how it was done. I'm like, oh, it's not CG. Oh my gosh, that's all practical.
It's all practical.
And so I had to watch it.
Okay,
Yeah.
I have not seen this.
I don't want to see anything, but it was so interesting that it made me.
Well,
Okay,
when
I've seen nothing so far. All I know is it's called The Rings of Power.
Go check out the teaser trailer that just dropped. As of this podcast, of the recording of it, it just dropped a couple of days ago, a couple of weeks by the time we get it posted. But it doesn't give away anything about the plot besides the title. It is a beautiful, beautiful use of practical effects.
See, I've already read the Silmarillion. It's already been spoiled, so.
So it'll only take you about a minute. It's gorgeous. And
A little bit about some of the technology. They used a camera called the Phantom Flex, which shoots at like 1,000 frames per second.
Wait,
holy cow.
what?
Yeah, it's amazing. So you can get this super, super slow-mo stuff and capture details that are too fast for your eye to see. And they had the...
Is that why in a couple of the shots you see what you think is fog or steam rolling over the wood, which you almost think is a landscape, why it's so beautiful and detailed that it looks like it's CGI?
Yeah, that is sublimating wood.
Oh.
It's actually steam being produced out of the surface that the metal is being poured on. And the metallurgist who is doing this says, I've been working with metal for 40 years. And looking at it in slow motion like that, I saw things that I have never known that the metal does. It's like, it was really, really fascinating.
Wow.
I'm loving it even more now. As soon as we're done recording, I'm going to watch it again.
I'm watching it right now. I don't care about the audio quality. Okay, wow, that's just wood. Oh my gosh. Well, now that was a teaser.
Very teasy.
I mean, it tells you nothing. Well, no, it tells you the title. But wow, that was gorgeous. My thought is
Yeah.
what they've done is they've taken all of their Expanse budget and put it over to this now.
Could be.
So, well done, Amazon. You definitely gave us a really nice little teaser. Now give us a really nice show. Okay, please. Thank you. That's all we ask.
Because it's going to be delaying the next season of Wheel of Time by at least a couple of months.
Wait, really?
Yeah, they don't want to release Wheel of Time at the same time next year because it'll be too close to Lord of the Rings.
But they have no problem releasing Expanse and Wheel of Time at the same time.
Well, they're not the same genre.
I mean, yeah, they're not.
The same people aren't watching them.
And yeah,
No one likes fantasy and sci-fi, Mike. That's just crazy
ridiculous.
talk.
I'll just go ahead and mute myself for the rest of the episode. I have no idea what to do except retreat in shame. I'm sorry, guys.
Next, you're going to tell me that people like Star Trek and Star Wars. I mean,
Well,
come on.
that I've never heard of.
Yeah.
I've never written
Really?
crossover fan fiction. I mean, me? No.
Back to Wheel of Time, though.
Now that we spent 20 minutes talking about a 15-second teaser.
How long is it going to take for us to get through 8 episodes? Well, not that long, considering, as I said before, they should have been 12. But I really am looking forward to season 2 for many reasons. Just the fact that we've got it, I'm happy. But I think my biggest gripe is the overall treatment of my favorite character from the books, and that is Perrin. Now, they've done some things with Perrin that I really liked, that I wasn't expecting, but I thought brought greater nuance to the character. Like the fact that his wife's death, her death being his main reason for a dislike of violence and specifically an axe. I'm like, okay, that's cool. I like that. That feels very grounded and realistic. But I feel like that they've completely glossed over the fact that he's a blacksmith, which is a big part of who he is. I mean, we haven't seen him swing a hammer once in the entire series. We've seen his wife do more blacksmithing than he has. He's a man who I always saw as very loyal to his friends, very stalwart. And the whole, like, kind of possible love triangle thing between him, Egwene, and Rand, I did not like that. That did not need to be there.
I think
that's my opinion. That is my opinion totally. But I don't feel like that really added anything to the series, and I thought it did a disservice to the character.
I think that kind of reflects the notion that a lot of Hollywood-influenced people, and I say Hollywood as if it's a monolithic thing, which it obviously is not, but that you can't have a close friendship without there being some kind of romantic involvement.
Yeah.
It's the same thing like people trying to say that Frodo and Sam are gay for each other. It's like, no, they can be really close friends without having to want to boink each other.
Yeah.
It's totally possible.
Yeah, people are afraid of the idea of platonic intimacy.
Mm-hmm.
It's a problem in our culture.
And
It
so
really
the notion that Perrin and Egwene could, spend this time being close to each other, sharing their body warmth, and it not be a romantic thing is just kind of foreign to some people's brains.
I think that the problem is that writers as a species have problems with their hormones that don't connect to the rest of humanity.
Oh, you've read Harry Turtledove too? The character that I thought had been shortchanged the most was Matt. And not just because the actor had to drop out partway through the season, but in the books, he's always happy-go-lucky. He's mischievous and playful. And you totally lose that in the show where he's this brooding, and from the very beginning, it's like he's had the dagger from day one instead of, you don't really see a personality shift as much because he started dark.
Yeah, in the books, he's happy-go-lucky, he's carefree, reckless, but loyal. Let's make him broody and tortured.
Yeah. And I think they kind of mixed his family with the Congers a little bit.
Yes, I thought that as well.
And I can see why you'd want to simplify things and reduce the number of characters in the show, because even Jordan at some point decided, if I keep writing all of these characters, this thing is never going to end.
See, what I liked about the books was that all of the characters, Egwene, Rand, Matt, Perrin, they all had good relationships with their parents.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, in the books, after the Edmonds Field group had left, worried about their sons, Tam,
Oh, right,
Rand's
yeah.
father, and I don't remember, but forgive me. I don't remember a tertiary character's name in the
Abel.
Wheel of Time. Yes, amongst the 400 of them. What was it again? Abel?
Abel.
They packed up and they went to Tar Valon, trying to get answers, trying to find their boys. We're going to bring them back. I wouldn't believe that the father we met in the TV show would ever do that.
The Tam we got to see would.
Oh, absolutely.
But I don't believe that about Abel at all.
No, not one bit. Yeah, I agree about Matt. I'm going to stick with what I said about Perrin. I like the actor who they got to play Perrin, though.
He's really
very
well
good.
cast.
Very well cast. I mean, the casting for this show has been very good. I feel like that the understanding of the core characters has been kind of hit and miss.
Mm-hmm.
You talked a moment ago about how two people can have a strong relationship, a man and woman, without it turning romantic. My biggest fear was that they were going to do that with Lan and Moraine.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like in a couple of moments that they were alluding to that fact. I'm like, no, don't take this any further. Please, please.
Yeah, actually, now that you mention that, that was something that did impress me, was that because they have a relationship as close as it could be, know, with the essentially psychic link, and they're very comfortable with each other, and they know each other so exceptionally well, and yet there's not that romantic component to their relationship, and so that's kind of averted. So evidently the writers can understand it to some degree, or maybe they're just thinking, oh, we're going to make this so shocking that they can share a bathtub and not be with each other. It's like, it's magical. That's their excuse. Men and women can be friends if there's magic involved.
But only in fantasy worlds.
Right.
We got what we got. It is what it is. I'm happy that we're going to get a season 2. I mean, I think at this point they've even greenlit season 3. So I wasn't really 100% happy with the finale, but I don't want to spend like all my time talking about what I didn't like, especially when there was so much that I did. Lan has grown on me more, even with the Tactijamies. Moraine has been absolutely phenomenal. I've enjoyed the world building they've done, the whole show, Not Tell. That's been great. Nynaeve, wonderful actress. I've really enjoyed her on the screen. So please, Amazon, continue to build and get better. Traditionally, first seasons are the shakiest. So I'm looking forward to see how they improve in the seasons to come. And that will take us to Brian's Geek Out, which he's just going to continue the Wheel of Time talk.
Yes, I am. Because if there's anything that I've been geeking out to, my sister and I, each episode we were texting each other back and forth, discussing what we liked, what we didn't. And of course, we've covered a lot of that already. The final episode, it's like they changed an awful lot.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that part of the reason that they did so I approve of, and it's because in the book, Rand does everything. Rand defeats Baal Zaman. Rand finds the horn. Rand destroys all the Trollocs. It's the Rand show.
Basically, Rand gets God mode for about a chapter.
And while that's cool, they want more of a, what is the word I'm looking for, Mike? Ensemble.
Yeah.
Good job,
an
Mike.
Ensemble show. Yeah, thank you. So, all I had to do was ask him, and he just psychically provided the word.
It's one of my many talents.
Yeah, so, they handed finding the horn to Perrin. They handed destroying the Trollocs to Egwene and Nynaeve, just because they wanted us to spread the things out a little bit and give us a reason to want to follow everybody. And what they did with Moraine at the end was, and I actually read an article about this. We all know Moraine is our draw. She's the one that we've been building this show on, and she's the one that we're making most interesting. In The Great Hunt, Moraine's not in it. She leaves at the beginning of the book, and you don't see her until the very end. And we can't do that because we need her in the show. So they hamstrung her a little bit so that she could stick around and not be solving everybody's problems all the time with her magic, so that she could be in season 2 a lot more, which it's a little strange, but I approve of the reasons that they did it. Of course, season 2 is going to be way off the rails from the books, from The Great Hunt. For one thing, the motivation for Pad and Fane taking the horn to begin with this has to be totally different.
Mm-hmm. Which is a shame, because I really enjoyed the second book.
Mm-hmm. And I'm hoping that we'll still get most of the things that made that book great. Although I do wonder, there's not going to be that. One of the best conspiracy theories and theory crafting bits in the whole series was what's up with Varen? Because she lied at the beginning of the Great Hunt. 13 books later, we finally find out how she was able to lie. And if Moraine with the rest of the group, I just don't know how that's going to happen or work. If Varen's even going to be in it, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
It'd be a real shame if she's not, because she's one of my favorite characters. But anyway, we've talked about Wheel of Time for a long time now, so I should move on. One other show that we talked about last time that I mentioned I had just started was Cowboy Bebop, the live action adaptation. And I've gotten to the end of that now, and the things that I did not like about the editing at the beginning smoothed out by the end. I don't know if that was a matter of there's a different editor or we're just changing the style, and that was just the style of the casino scene fight that bothered me so much. But the action scenes seemed a lot more fluid as it went on.
I gotta say, their Vi is perfect. I mean, she's not the cartoon, she's not the anime Vi. She's her own Vi, and it's pretty amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Or at least it's my take.
Vi, who are you referring to?
Sorry,
There's Faye?
Wow. I slipped in a completely other character from a completely other show.
I was wondering. It's like, wait,
I
think I know who he's talking about, but that's not the name.
Okay.
I was like, I need to go to the IMDb and check the character list, because that one I've not seen the live action, but I've seen the anime enough times, and I don't remember.
No, I'm signing off. I'll let you, the rest of y'all, have the mics. There's no climbing out for me. I've also been watching Arcane, which I'm not going to go on about because I'm not going to take away from your time. But yes,
where was I going? Oh yeah, the Faye was well cast, and I liked the way they treated her too. I will say that I hate Ed even more than I did in the cartoon.
I haven't made it to Ed yet. I don't know how you could do Ed live action. Like, Ed is a cartoon. I don't know how you
could either. But they like dialed it up to 11, and she's only in the last scene. But it's like, oh goodness. As much as I like the show and I wish it would continue, I'm kind of glad it was canceled because I don't want to see any more of that character.
I'll have to wait till I get there to know what you're talking about.
Yeah. Like in the 30, 40 seconds that she's on screen, that's enough. I don't want a whole episode of her, please. But it did make me go back, and I'm rewatching the anime now also. And with the live action fresh in my head, and I'm looking and seeing where the differences are. And some of the things like, oh, yeah, that needed a change because that was not going to work in live action. Some of the changes in characterization and relationships.
Yeah, I am very fond of the character relationships in the anime. I get what they're trying to do with the live action. I think it's an entertaining show. I don't think that the differences are, they're not upsetting me. I don't think, I've seen some commentary. Well, this ruins the other media. Like, look, you can not like something.
Exists.
It's there. But yeah, I'm perfectly happy to watch them as separate entities.
Mm-hmm. What were we talking about? Was it Full Metal Alchemist that we were talking about with Bex last time? Where it's like you treat it almost like mythology, where the story from time to time will change. We don't expect every retelling of Heracles' journey to be exactly the same because so many people retold it.
Right.
And it's the same kind of thing. It's like, okay, well, these are the characters. They're a little different. This is a telling of the story, maybe from somebody else's perspective. Who knows? And I kind of liked that perspective where it was like, oh, you know what? They can exist in their own spheres without having to contaminate one another. And I'm okay with that. I'm more okay with that now, I think, than I used to be when I was always trying to make all canon internally consistent all the time.
Right.
And then I read the new Jedi Academy trilogy, and that just goes out the window.
Yeah, that was...
So your first mistake was buying the books.
Yes.
I had an emotional reaction while reading that the first time in high school. So, or was it college? I think it was in college. Jeez.
It would have been college when they came out. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, but on the subject of science fiction, as I've mentioned before, I'm running a Traveler game, which is starting next Tuesday. I borrowed a little bit from the Mongoose 2nd edition version of Traveler. I'm only using like bits and pieces of it, and I'm bolting all of that onto Traveler 5. But they had this thing where you roll for a random event during each term of your character's development because it uses a life path character generation. And for each event, the other characters are allowed to connect their characters to that event. So somebody's like, okay, well, I had an encounter with a black marketeer. Does anybody else want to have that in common? And somebody says, oh, yeah, sure. I'll have the black marketeer in my background too. As a reward for making the connection, they each get a bonus skill, but it also immediately ties characters together during character creation. So you don't have to do we meet in a bar scene. And through this, I picked up a little bit from the Monster of the Week game that we ran, where all of the connections all kind of pulled together into a single event. And I've been writing up this battle that all 5 of my travelers were involved in as a result of their meeting the black marketeer and saving the ship from something. And I had the opportunity to use my position to prop it, and I turned it down. And all of these things are feeding into the singular event. And the first session, I'm going to open it with a flashback to this battle. And the players will be able to make like minor decisions. They're not going to be able to change the ultimate outcome. But that way, their backstory is right there in the game, and we don't have to deal with how do you know each other and getting to know each other. It's done, and it's there at the very, very beginning. And I'm really liking. I think I'm really going to like the dynamics that it creates and the being able to skip directly to the action.
I don't know, flashbacks in RPGs already on its own, that's almost a show topic right there, because there's so much fun you can have with that. I had a GM who ran one, and I absolutely loved it. Like, what we said is, since we were talking over a table, like, oh yeah, and back when we were doing this, and remember how what I did is when that guy pulled the gun on you, I did this. And the GM said, okay, yeah, roll for that. Like, wait, what? Like, yeah, you said you did it. Use your character sheet right now and roll for it. And he made the roll and he failed. And the NPC he was talking to said, that's not quite the way I remembered it. The way I remember it is. And, he declared what they did and he made the roll and it succeeded. And so that was what actually happened. And it was a dialogue of wits, like going back and forth. And you could say the most elaborate thing without risk to your character's life or health, but it changes the social battle of the scene at the table, which was the most creative and fascinating thing I'd ever seen.
There's a mechanic in a game. I'm wanting to say it's Inspectors. I haven't ever actually played it, but you've got this thing where you're in the middle of the scenario, and then the game master will call for a flashback to, it's actually a flash forward to the character, because it's the conceit is that it's a reality show, and we're going to flash forward and we're going to have the confession to the camera bit. And so you get to say, and all of this stuff happened, and then you go back to the action and you have to make that stuff happen, but you can still twist it. I was like, that's a really interesting thing to try and do.
That is clever.
You kind of do the same thing in Primetime Adventures, where at the beginning of the scenario, everybody gets a coming up on moment, and they get to just narrate like a couple of shots. And at some point during the game, you have to weave those couple of shots into the action, which can be very difficult if people are not cooperating with it.
I can only imagine.
The great thing is that you can turn it on its head, because it's the preview of a TV show. So like I opened one with, we see our characters, in the penthouse, and then we cut to outside and there's an explosion and the penthouse blows up. And, if you're watching a TV show, you're like, okay, well, everybody's not dead. We know something happened there. And you watch it, and sure enough, that scene happens, but nobody's in the penthouse at the time.
Right.
And so you get to do that kind of thing. And in that particular instance, they had to evacuate because they saw the missile coming and they had to get clear of it. It's like, I have no idea how this is going to play out. It's like, next time on Circuit Breakers, the penthouse blows up. But anyway, that's not about Traveler. And I'm done talking about Traveler. So Mike, what are you geeking out about?
This month has actually been kind of a heavier, actually the last 48 hours, really 24, has been a pretty geek heavy time. Last night I had the wonderful opportunity to sit down for a Doctor Who RPG with Joy, James, you should know her pretty well. Actually, we all know her pretty well. And my wife Kaja and Shanine from First Geek 411. And it was just great to sit down with good people and roll some dice and have some fun. I don't want to give too much away. I might want to run this scenario again. But the general idea was I asked them basically, what kind of character do you want in a Doctor Who adventure in the style of the TV show? And so they gave me their characters, and it looked such great ideas, such a wonderful joy to build these particular characters to be in that space together. And I told them, well, you've got some pretty strong characters, but you won't need to worry about it. It's going to be a pretty mild adventure. All you're doing is you're going out for the best Danish in all of England. And so they start the adventure, and that's what's in their head. So they're looking for Danishes. They're in 6th century Scandinavia, and they find themselves in Hrothgar's mead hall, and come to discover they are in the middle of Beowulf. And Beowulf is there, and Grendel is there, and there was a lot of mystery to be explored with, wait, exactly how is a huge horrible monster actually in 6th century Scandinavia? And at the end, Joy says, wow, wait a minute, we didn't get any Danishes. And I looked at her like after the roll credits, and I said, well, Joy, Beowulf is the best Danish in all of England. And the look of contempt she gave me for that pun was well deserved.
So that's why there's a hole burned through my laptop screen. I do want to mention just how much she enjoyed that game.
That's grand.
She had an absolute blast. She felt that it was so relaxing, so fun, so low stress. It was exactly what she needed. So thank you for including her.
Awesome. Yeah. I mean, I can't think of 3 people I'd rather put at that table. There's one other I wanted to include, but they were not available, unfortunately. But no, it's just good time with good people. The only thing that I really feel like I could have done differently is, since Kaja did not know Shanine, Joy did not know Shanine. I mean, they all knew me. I just kind of started us, running in the adventure. I think it would have been good to have an icebreaker of some sort to let folk get to know each other a bit, and then start into something that is by nature a social game. So if I happen to run this sort of thing again, I might try to figure out how do we real quick do something to break the ice. During that adventure, I was using a new acquisition. James had tried to nudge me and say, hey Mike, a friend of mine's running a new company, and he's got something that's kind of up your alley. You like dice, right, Mike? Right, Mike? Right. You like dice? Like, I have enough dice, James. Okay.
I'm sorry. I feel like I'm being villainized right now. And that is absolutely not what happened.
That is exactly what happened in this fictionalization of that conversation.
James appears in this black cloak with red lining. Like,
it's draped across my face, and all you see is my red eyes.
What will you give me for these dice?
It is only one more set, Mike. You can stop any time you want.
Look at the D20. See how it rolls.
Actually, it was one of those things like, okay, that's cool. They make resin dice. I don't need more dice. I mean, they're well priced for what you're getting. I mean, it's 2 D20s and 4 D6s and the rest of the polyhedral sets. You're getting 11 dice for a reasonable price. I'm not buying. I'm just not buying it. I'm not.
Have we said the name of the company yet?
Shiny Math Rocks? No, we have not. And then I saw that they were running a Facebook ad with a coupon code. Like, okay, time to make bad choices. And so I did. No, they're beautiful. I think that they're great. Do you know what? I think it was the love and the care that went into the packaging and everything. It looks like somebody really loves what they're doing, and I really appreciate that.
The gentleman and lady who own the company are a wonderful pair of people in the SCA who live down in the Austin area. And they're just, go to shinymathrocks.shop. He makes some really, really beautiful sets. And they also have a custom D20 page as well, where you can load up a very simple, very plain picture, have that be the 20 on the dice. And the reviews I've seen and for the pictures I've seen him post online, they look really cool.
Yeah, I like them. I'm going to roll them again. And since this has been kind of an RPG theme for my Geek Out, I also, since our last recording, I had a Roll for Shoes adventure with kind of my regular game group, but not. I have a regular Star Wars Saga Edition game, and the GM kind of let everybody know, okay, we had 2 players bail. We should just cancel for tonight. And I had said, well, hang on. Do you still want to meet in role play? Because I can run an adventure. And I told them it's not going to be Star Wars. The system is simple. Do you want to play? And they're like, sure, that's fine. Yeah, we'll do that. And so I wound up making some calls. Unfortunately, some really good people were busy. Looking at both of my co-hosts. But my friend Sydney was available. And so we had Kaja, Sydney, and my GM, Will. And the premise was that they had heard about the new Disney reboot of Firefly, which to my understanding is actual thing. And the characters were so dismayed at the concept of the reboot of Firefly if it was not going to be done as it should be with Muppets. And after giving their proposal and petition to Jim Henson Studios and getting a rejection and a C&D and threats from a lawyer, they did the only right thing they could do, which is a heist to have guerrilla filmmaking, so they could break into the Jim Henson Studios with the camera they can take in with them and remake Firefly with whatever is on hand at Jim Henson Studios. And then the tilt. I may run that again. Maybe we'll say more about the tilt later, but just, I mean, it's a zany concept, and Roll for Shoes just seems to be built for zaniness. Half the time Kaja was making rolls looking for David Bowie's Magic Pants.
For a few minutes now, I've had stuck in my mind the image of Kermit the Frog in a brown coat going, well, I swear by my pretty floral bonnet, I will end you. Yeah.
Let's see. I think I have the notes somewhere around here. I might be able to remember who they had. Yeah, I don't have it. I don't have it written down who it is that they cast. But they
aim
were
to misbehave.
Yeah, I mean, it was. Oh, wait a second. Yeah, they had Moki from Fraggle Rock as Anara. They had Super Grover as Mal.
Okay, I'm down for that.
Miss Piggy was Saffron. Gonzo they had as Wash. And since Gonzo was Wash, I mean, who else is Gonzo going to be married to except a chicken for Zoe? And so it just...
Camilla.
Camilla, that's right, Camilla. And that's when things went downhill.
Who was Jane, just out of curiosity?
Oh, I forgot who they cast as Jane. But it had so many Muppets coming in ways they did not expect, and their characters may never recover from. So, yeah, I'll probably run that one again. I have it in the back of my head maybe to try that one out as an actual play. So we'll see.
Hey, you're welcome to run it on with my group if you want.
We'll see what can happen. That's it for my Geek Out.
Speaking of gaming, Brian, I feel we forgot to mention that we got to do some more of our Monster of the Week campaign.
We did. We got to finish out that first adventure that we started back in October or something.
Of 2020. Not quite that long, but it sure felt like it.
And we got the teaser for our next... Actually, no, we got all the way through the second one, didn't we?
Accidentally.
Yeah. James shortcutted to the end of the the adventure, so we got it all done in about an hour.
I accidentally Konami coded the session.
Some games are like that.
Well, so it revolved around a ghost. And for those who are familiar with Supernatural, it was like the white woman, a woman in white, the white bride trope.
Which was actually, I think, the very first episode of Supernatural.
I think you're right. My character, he knows nothing of magic. He knows nothing of ghosts. He is a dyed-in-the-wool monster hunter. So when he encountered this supernatural item, he really thought that it was just some middle-aged soccer mom who was trying to scare a boy away from her daughter. And so when he found this ratty, old, half-buried wedding dress, he thought, well, I'm going to nip this in the bud, and he set it on fire.
Oops. That was the anchor, wasn't it?
Yes. So, well, the adventure's over. And I'm back in town.
This is the best part.
And we're doing all of this research, trying to find out, who she was and why is she still haunting and what can we do to solve it. And they come back to town and are like, we know who it is. Yeah, we already solved it. But I made a PowerPoint.
It would have been wonderful TV. Like there's this montage set to really great music of them poring over ancient tomes. You see translations from old languages upon a whiteboard. Brian's character in another getting into an argument over it, and then more poring over tomes. Brian's character bringing the other ones a cup of tea as an apology. They make up, and finally, Eureka! There's the moment. It's like, we've got it. We know who she is. We know how to solve this. And then there's my character in the woods standing over a burnt wedding dress, just a pile of ashes. Well, that was easy.
I'm just trying to imagine any other scenario in which you'd be standing over a pile of ashes of a wedding dress saying, well, that was easy. And wondering if you'd live through the night. But anyway. Context
is everything. It's a good thing I didn't mention the tied-up pizza delivery boy.
Tied-up pizza delivery boys are generally really hard to explain to, like, anybody.
Yeah. Although they were very important in this game, because one way that our group gets their information is through pizza delivery people. They're like a major source of information for us about what's happening around the town. And when we heard from the owner of a pizza place that one of his had gone missing, I mean, you'd think the president had been kidnapped. I mean, we went into high gear.
The thing that
They're like our version of the Baker Street irregulars.
Yeah.
The thing that really bothers me is starting this, you said how large is this collection of tied up pizza boys that you had?
Well, they're not all tied up.
Yeah. Oh, good. Okay. So the tied and untied pizza boys are included in the bay.
We untie them so that they can deliver a pizza, and then back down into the basement they go.
I feel like these were relevant details you could have disclosed earlier. All right. So I guess that wraps it up for my Geek Out, which brings us to our main topic of today, which I'm sure is going to be just as, if not more, solidly targeted on point as our Geek Out has been. What geeky hobby would you like to try, or would you like to start?
That one took a while for me. It's one that we've had on our list of show ideas for a long time. And the wonderful thing about our whole geeky world, that there is so much to do, so much that you could like spend a lifetime pursuing various hobbies and still not get in all the ones that you want to. Because I guess you still have to do things like, job, spend time with family, the stuff that distracts. Sleep, yes.
Go to the hospital, the normal things.
Yeah.
It's January and time for new beginnings.
And it is. Who wants to kick it off?
I guess I will. As you know, I am a giant Green Arrow nerd, and there aren't a whole lot of giant Green Arrow nerds out there. And so it can be difficult sometimes, if you want to read the character and get all of the nuance and get all of the important stories, it's hard to find a reading guide. And so I thought, I've read almost all of it. I've read an awful lot. I could make a reading guide, but I wouldn't want to do just that. It's like, so I've had it in this idea in my head of putting a Green Arrow fan site up call it like Queen Industries or queenconsolidated.com or something. It would have the reading guide, and it would have, analysis and so forth. It's not something I think I'll ever actually do, because I just don't want the burden of keeping it up. And a website that is never updated is worse than no website at all, in my opinion, sometimes. But it's an idea that I've had kicking around in my head. It's like, oh, that would be cool. I really wish somebody else would do it.
I wish somebody else would do it. That's why I'm going to do it, is the reason why the NSS now has a carbide lamps page. Or now, like I did it in like 2005. I kind of felt bad about not updating it anymore, but when I was talking about technology that hasn't been updated since the 1970s, I figured I'd get a pass.
Yeah, but you're probably safe there. They don't publish a new carbide lamp every month, as far as I know.
No, they do not. No. I think I wrote an article on one of the most recently produced ones in India. Actually, it wound up being pretty contentious because I gave it a very mild review, which is kinder than I probably should have. And the guy got super angry that it wasn't like a stellar review and exposed me as a competitor of his, because I, as he could exclusively reveal, was Mike, not going to disclose his last name, of Mike Lights. And that's why I gave such a bad review. And I was on the same carbide camp lamps is not a huge thing, so I was in the same community, which he was saying like, dude, you're from India, maybe you don't know, but Mike's a pretty common name. What you've done is, hey, my name is Ronald, I am in a McDonald's, therefore I am Ronald McDonald. And the moderator stepped in.
QED.
I'm sorry, I took us way off course.
No, I was done, so off course as you want to go.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have a whole lot of things to say about a website that I'm never actually going to do.
You might still. I mean, you never thought you'd write books about effects programming, but you did.
Well, I've written like 80% of a book. I never thought I would do that, and I still haven't.
Hey, I never thought that I'd write 100% of a book, and I did co-author it, and then the company that I was writing it for went belly up, so I still don't have it. Hey, but the manuscript is neat. Well, James, what geeky hobby would you like to start?
For a while, I thought it'd be fun, and I realize the hole that you could fall into starting this. But painting miniatures has always seemed interesting to me.
Oh, yeah.
I'm well aware. I have friends who do it. I've watched videos on it. And it's very much along the vein of once you start down this dark path, forever will it dominate your destiny.
And then you post pictures on Twitter and everybody tells you how great of a job you did and then just feeds that ego, which just makes you want to do it all the more.
Yeah. So first off, I have no interest in the whole Warhammer 40K Space Marine thing. You don't. I don't, period, end of story. It's not my jam. But the closest I got to anything similar to that is when I was doing some of the hero clicks. And not the Marvel or DC ones, but they had like D&D style hero clicks, and they had Star Trek Starship hero clicks. And that's about it. And I enjoyed that because friends I was with were doing it at the same time. And yeah, so anyway, I still have like a Star Trek hero clicks fleet somewhere in my closet that's just been sitting up there collecting dust, but I'm not getting rid of it because I like the minis.
They're pretty cool.
They are. Although I'm still upset that I bought quite a few boxes and I still never got a USS Enterprise D or E. And I refuse to go on eBay and spend $40 for one.
How about on to Shapeways and order one? It's not an Enterprise, but it might be a spaceship prize.
But there are a lot of different minis out there. I mean, there's Star Wars, medieval, BattleTech, D&D, especially the BattleTech ones. I was not a big Mech Warrior. Well, I loved the Mech Warrior PC games, and I enjoy BattleTech. I've always loved seeing how people can paint those, and I've always wanted to like try and paint my own Warhammer. But I'll be honest, when it comes to like painting, I'm not great. I don't have a lot of fine control for the detail, and the fact that I don't, I think, would frustrate me more than satisfy me.
While I can understand that, like, isn't that the point of hobbies? Like, you're not getting graded on your work. I mean, you're just, if you want to do it, you can do it, and you don't have to be the greatest because it's your pastime.
Yes, but that involves, not self-judging.
Fair.
And I'm not like a perfectionist, but if I didn't get like the carbon scoring on the muzzle of the PPC cannon exactly right, it would keep me up at nights.
James, you're not a perfectionist, but you maybe do 3 takes on the last thing that I said to you. So come on.
Hey,
just kidding, listeners. That's not true.
Don't make me beep you again.
Now I got to release that audio clip.
Have you guys ever tried your hand at it?
I gave my eldest a starter pack because she was interested in trying it. And Pandemonium Books and Games for Christmas, which is our local game store and bookstore, had pre-packaged kits where they sold you a couple of unpainted minis, some starter brushes, some starter paints, and some green goop, or the green, the green stuff. It's not always necessarily green, but you get to shape it and it hardens. And basically some starters on how to teach yourself to do this. So she hasn't cracked it open yet, but she wants to get into it. She does all kinds of painting anyway. So
I've never done any mini painting, but I did have a class in college where we constructed some miniature landscape. So I did a little bit of that.
Oh, very cool.
I've kind of wanted to, but it's a matter of getting the minis and the paints and everything and actually starting. That's kind of the thing. And then I also know that Hero Forge exists. So that would probably drain my bank account. Like, oh, I could make this mini for a game, which I will never play.
Yeah, I just don't want all the knickknacks around my place. I'm not much for things. And so getting into mini painting is like, I know I would just have shelves and shelves of the things, and it's like, I don't want them.
Mm-hmm.
As much as I might enjoy the process, I wouldn't enjoy the end result.
Mike, with what you said, anytime we go to Hobby Lobby, like there is one aisle that has the landscapes or the pieces that you can buy for the landscaping, whether it's train sets, miniatures, or whatever you're making. That does fascinate me as well, because there are also sets that you can buy and basically create the walls and the towers and the palisades and more to create your own castle.
Oh man, I should have taken you to that model train store in Denver. It was gigantic and amazing. You'd have loved it.
I might have walked out of there with stuff I should not have bought. But there are these kits that you can buy where you can like pour into a mold and create castle walls, and they will connect with others. And so you can design it out, build your own, paint it, and more that you can add to the inside to make it look like this real scale work of a medieval keep. And I look at those, and because there were also a couple of comic book and game stores in Colorado Springs that had them for sale, and I just stare at them and like, oh, I need to walk away right now. I have no room for any of this or the money to get into it, but I really like it.
Yeah, I've always had a real appreciation for the people who can make those sort of things and paint those. Just so much appreciation for what they do.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have the space.
I will say my desire to get into the miniature painting has lessened somewhat because, I mean, who doesn't want their own custom character for gaming or whatever? And like you said, now that we do have Hero Forge, and I can just in 15 minutes time make one on there and order it. Oh, who am I kidding? We all spend way too much time on Hero Forge, and we do it for longer than 15 minutes. Yeah.
You can do it in 15 minutes. Likely what you're going to be doing is you're going to be sitting an hour going back and forth. Do I want these gloves or these gloves? These gloves? Oh, what about this pose? Hey, other person who has no interest in this, tell me your opinion. Should it be this weapon or this weapon, as they're desperately trying to get away? Yeah.
I just logged onto mine because I do have a Hero Forge account. I have not bought one for myself, but we did buy a Hero Forge gift card for one of my nieces who is huge into gaming so that she could make her own. You can make a character and save it. And I currently have 11 characters saved.
See, I've only bought one, and that's when my eldest was doing a Star Wars RPG with us, and there were no squibs anywhere to be purchased in the minis line. Like, well, okay, I guess we're ramshackling a squib together, and we did, and she was thrilled.
I've only used it to make tokens for Roll20.
Every time I think that I'm going to just go ahead and bite the bullet and purchase one, another character concept comes along or a different game comes along. Like, I did a couple of episodes of the Barden Bible with Mike Perna as the Ranger Finn Red Wolf. So I made what I envisioned Finn, what I thought he'd look like. I thought, I'm going to print him off. And before that, I had made my dwarf Bowen from the Middle Earth game that Brian ran. You know, I was in with all of one session. But then I also made my character Hal from the City on a Hill game that Brian and I have been in. And then I made Edward Boone, my character from the Monster of the Week campaign. And I'm like, I can't decide. I can't do all of them because when they showed up on the credit card, I would just be me and my minis in a hotel somewhere.
If you buy that dwarf, remember to put a crossbow bolt in his chest.
Oh,
yeah. That would be a great... They're always adding stuff to Hero Forge. Like, I get email updates for what they've added. That would be great. Arrows in the chest. Well, no, maybe not, because that could get really grisly.
Yes.
Arrow to the knee, all sorts of options.
But considering what they add every month, new clothes, props, weapons, and more, I could see them adding like wounds at some point.
For the character that's never at full hit points.
Mm-hmm. For the berserker in your party. So what else have you guys got?
One thing that's been on my mind and has gotten my attention a few different times is resin dice making. And I've seen the tutorial videos, I've looked at the molds, and I almost pulled the trigger last year. But then I started doing some research as to what it would take to actually get this off the ground. And it's really tricky to work with the resin if you don't want bubbles in it. And there's plenty of videos on there of how to make these really intricate artisanal dice, how to make it look really speckly and sparkly and layered through the middle and so forth. But the one thing that it comes down to is you're working with resin. So you have to have some workspace that you don't mind getting resin all over everywhere. And you can put down newspapers for sure, but there's a lot of control you have to have over that area, especially while it's curing. And two of the main things are the dedicated space, and also it has to be well ventilated. So I can't just shut off part of my basement that has absolutely no ventilation unless I'm opening up a window. And I have 2 cats who I'm sure would love to integrate part of their hair with anything that I'm doing, or permanently integrate some resin into their hair.
I don't think there's a market for a furry dice yet. I mean, you could really be onto something.
Oh, that's so gross. Let's do it. Another thing that's really given me pause for thought is the fact that if you're going to be working with resin, you should have a respirator. And A, respirators can be kind of pricey, and B, how good of a seal does a respirator get when you have a beard? Because I'm guessing not great. And I don't know how much to play with the idea of not a great seal and vapors in my lungs, which I love and I want to keep this set. I'm really attached to it. So I think more research is needed.
Mm-hmm. I'm still back on the cat dice. Do you have dice that your spouse could be allergic to? Would you like to?
I am literally allergic to my husband's hobby.
Finally, an excuse.
I still will watch videos. A Dice Witchery actually has my attention a lot. She makes not only beautiful things, but she makes her own custom molds, and she has a mold making video that's just absolutely incredible. I've seen different molds that you can buy, and I was like, I saw her video pulling some dice out of her mold. I'm like, oh wow, where did you get those really cool dice molds? Oh, you made them. Well, that's a whole other thing.
Ooh, I'm on her website right now.
Uh-huh.
I should not be here.
Uh-huh. Check out her YouTube channel, because
Don't
there's
forget to delete your history.
yeah. Joy can't know where you've been. But yeah, another thing is that if you really want bubble-free molds and dice, you can get a pressure pot that will make sure that it cures at pressure, so bubbles can't form. But that's like $100, $150, $200. So once you add the molds, the resin, the respirator, and dedicated space, it looks, I'm just content to look at it and say, I'd love to do that. It looks like magic. I just don't know if I can pull the trigger on any of that. And I know you can do that incrementally. Like, you don't have to start at a certain level, but
you want to. You want to jump right to a certain point.
I don't want to make 20 loads of crap dice before I have one nice set. But I mean, that's the way the world works. The first thing that you do out of the gate is not going to be amazing. And we all have, anything that you're good at, you've taken time to learn to be good at. So,
Mike, this D20 you sent me, thank you, but I've rolled 11 3 times in a row. Well, that's not weird. No, 11 is on the dice 3 times.
Hey, look, you best be thankful, buddy, because the last 20-sided die I made only had 19 sides.
I would be very impressed.
Yeah.
I knew I was going to do that to your brain.
I want to know the physics behind that one.
No, you don't, because you're going to start hearing dark chanting in the background if you do.
It's a Cthulhu and horror how we get there.
Yeah.
You really don't want to know that terrible truth.
Joy,
Like
what number is that glowing number that just came up on the dice that Mike gave me? I don't know. Threve? I don't know. What?
I'm very interested in the one-sided die. Have you seen that?
Yeah, it's like a Mobius strip.
Yeah, the Ombach or something like that.
That's a thing that somebody did just because they could.
Mm-hmm. But speaking of rosin casting, I've seen, I do woodworking when I have time to do woodworking. That's another geeky hobby I would like to get into, woodworking. I've done it before, but I've had no time recently. I've seen some really beautiful things made with wood and rosin together, whether it's something as grand as a dining room table or as small as like a lamp. I would love to be able to get more into that. But like you said, Mike, sometimes you need a pressure pot, you need the molds, and you need time. And I looked into just doing a wood and rosin charcuterie board.
Ooh.
And the cost for the rosin itself, I'm like, okay, that's more than I wanted to spend right now.
Hey, but if you open up an Etsy shop, then you can turn this around and you can... No.
That's always a good idea. Yeah. Tell you what, we'll do it together. I'll make charcuterie and cutting boards. You make dice.
Oh gosh. I mean, it seems like once you start selling it, I think I would enjoy it less. If that once there's customers I have to please.
Yeah. We'll call our Etsy shop Pants and Arrows. What do you sell? Dice and charcuterie boards. Wait, yeah, I know.
Can I get some pants? No, we don't do that.
I know. Sorry. Or if you do, they have to be purple.
Yes.
I had almost forgotten where that joke came from.
Well, does that toss it back to me then?
Yeah, I was going to say, hey, Brian, why don't I just go ahead and set that up? So, Brian, is there anything else that you'd like to get into?
Well, we actually talked about it a little bit earlier when we were talking about the miniature terrain. I've had this notion of model making, and this is not something I would like to start. This is something that I actually tried to start. I've got a cutting mat and a bunch of wood and saws and knives and stuff on my breakfast table that have been there for 3 years, 2 years. I had this notion. You remember back a couple of years ago, people were posting pictures of those little bookshelf inserts.
Oh, yeah.
You look into it, and it's
a
little world inside the bookshelf. It's like, oh yeah, that's really cool. I want to make some of those. And I even gathered information. James might remember. Actually, I don't remember if I actually asked you the question because I knew what I was going to do for you. But I asked Joy, if you could go anywhere, like some real or imaginary world, where would you like to spend your time? It's like, and I had this notion of making these things for my friends. And I was going to do this like this little tiny blacksmith shop for you, James.
Oh, cool.
I had a reference. I knew exactly what it was going to look like and what I was going to need, but it's like, I have not done it. I've got the parts for my sisters still sitting on the dining room table or on the breakfast table, gathering dust. And I was like, I really wanted to do this because I admire people who make physical things and have a thing at the end of it. But I'm like James. If I'm not good at it immediately, I get discouraged. Plus, when I started building this thing, I was following one of those Instructables, do it yourself, and watching this guy in his video cutting the wood, and he's just cutting it with like a razor blade. Like, oh, I don't need a saw or anything. So I try this. It's not working for me because the craft wood that you can buy from Amazon is birch. And when I looked at the hardness index for various woods, birch is like right under ironwood.
Oh, geez.
It's extremely hard.
That's what Amazon was selling as craft wood?
Yes. It's like, and this guy's using pine. Pine, of course, is very soft.
I would have actually, woodworker's suggestion, pine is soft. It's crap to carve, though, because of the grain structure. For what you're talking about, I would have recommended basswood.
Basswood.
Mm-hmm.
I will look into that. Is the only sources I should have asked somebody who knows, like you, James, where can I buy some wood suitable for this crafting project? Because it's like my choices were Amazon, buying the craft wood from Amazon or Hobby Lobby or whatever, or going over to the local the yokel lumberyard. No, the local lumber. I can't say it. Where's this Y coming from?
The employees there. Yep, we got
the
best
local
lumber for you.
Lumberyard. Yeah, sure, you betcha. I don't know where that Y was coming from.
I'm Googling
anyway, I went to the lumberyard.
I'm Googling lumberyard right now, and you don't want to see the results, man. They're scary.
I don't know. It sounds like a place where you could buy bubble gum and chocolate.
I have no idea. I am not telling the truth yet again.
And it's like just asking for, okay, do you have anything suitable for my purposes that's like 1/4-inch plywood, something. And they sent me home with some stuff that's like really rough and barely suitable because it's a lumberyard. They're not selling craft wood. They're selling stuff for building buildings.
Mm-hmm.
So I have not been at all successful so far.
Is there
making?
I know there's a lot of them in the Midwest. I don't know if there's one in California, but there's a store called Woodcraft. It is yet another store that I could go in and drop a couple of $1,000 easy. Let's see. Woodcrafts in Sacramento, Orange County, San Carlos, and Ventura. I know
Not
nothing.
Real close, but someplace that I could get to like on the way to somewhere else.
Okay. So they have got wood by the score for the intents and purpose of, they've got real craft wood. I mean, you can buy anything there from basswood, poplar, cherry, purple heart, and a lot more. But honestly, you can also pick up some really nice sizes and lengths and thicknesses of basswood on Amazon.
I do not believe it. There's actually a website called Dark Poutine's Yumber Yard. But do go on about what's available on Amazon.
For a minute, I was thought you were questioning me. I was like, no, really, I'm seeing right now 7-piece basswood carving blocks at $10.99 Amazon.
I waited to time it.
Well done, sir. Well done indeed.
Ventura and Orange County are about equally distant and very far away. Maybe if I'm taking a day trip down to San Diego or something, leave a day early.
There you go.
Anyway, but maybe someday in the distant future, my sister will get her bookshelf insert. And I'm not going to tell what it is because I still hope that someday I might complete it. And I want it to be a surprise. I have no hopes of ever finishing yours or starting yours.
It's okay.
like, oh, you shouldn't have, Brian. Yeah, you really should not have made a diorama from Grave of the Fireflies. Like, really, you should not have done that. This is gonna make me sad every day.
That got dark.
My kid came home with an officially licensed candy tin from Grave of the Fireflies. And I'm like, why? Why would somebody give this to my poor, sweet, innocent child? This is awful and hilarious at the same time.
Why is it? It's an insert, but why is it next to the book Fahrenheit 451?
Oh, this keeps getting dark. I mean, on the other side of that, the joy of cooking, but still.
Whose turn is it?
I think it's back to James.
All right. I've kind of become known as like the medieval sword guy on the podcast, and rightly so for my activities within the SCA. But for a while now, I've thought it would be fun to branch out a little bit and maybe give a LARP a try.
Nerd.
Oh, hey, come on. Okay, we need to unpack that. Like, you go, then we're going to go and unpack that. Like, you go, then we're going to go and unpack that.
Really, Ray? You want to go down that road with me?
Like, I know that he was doing it like...
Before you throw that grenade.
I know that it was like all in fun and teasing, but I think that we, like, let's circle back around to that, because I think it would be kind of a cool thing to unpack. But let's...
Okay. Mm-hmm. It is a very nerdy thing to do. And it is something that is seen in popular culture as being an incredibly nerdy thing to do. Joy and I finally got around to watching all the episodes of Hawkeye. And I just want to say right now, tired, frustrated, impatient, sore, ice pack wearing Clint Barton is my favorite superhero right now in the MCU. I love Dad Hawkeye. He is great. And I feel every single one of his ouches and boo-boos. The episode where he's grabbing margarita packets and bags of frozen peas from the freezer.
Just tying them on.
Piling them on different parts of his body while he sits in a recliner. It's so great. I think it's been my favorite. It didn't start out that way, but it ended up being my favorite Disney Plus series so far. Mm-hmm. And due in no small part to the inclusion of Yelena from the Black Widow movie, because she's great.
Yeah, I hadn't watched the show because I kind of had referred to Hawkeye as the least interesting Avenger, but I hear that the TV show changes all of that.
Mm-hmm. It's quite good.
Yes.
Episode 4 in particular.
I'll watch that one first.
So anyway, the presence of LARPers is there throughout the season. One of them has something that Hawkeye is trying to get back. To get it, he has to sign up for the LARP, put on a breastplate, and get a foam sword and join in. And, does it paint them in a very nerdy light? Oh, absolutely. But I appreciated that it also made them people, not just caricature of nerds.
And they were all extremely competent people in their own...
One was a police officer. One was a nurse, I think.
Firefighter.
One was a firefighter. One of them who was someone who made like the costumes that our main characters wear later. And I believe that very much because I've seen the incredible garb and armor that hobbyists can make. And it's astounding. The talent there is just as good as anything that you'd see on like a TV show or a movie.
Part of the fun of that is the craftsmanship for those people who are into it.
Yeah. In the SCA, we call it A&S, Arts and Science. The things that are made are labors of love and are absolutely wonderful to behold. So I, for the longest time, kind of had a very dim view of LARPs. I was very judgmental of them, partly because the few that I had seen in person were people wearing like Slipknot t-shirts, baggy black cargo pants, bandanas, and swinging around pool noodles wrapped up in fabric and over PVC. And that was their swords.
I mean, people kind of have to start somewhere. I mean, I want to give them credit. Like,
I'm not going to.
But back in the 80s and 90s, like, that's kind of what people had. Like, they had to make safe weapons out of what they had on hand. And it was camp foam and PVC. We didn't have the injection molded.
It was very humble beginnings.
Yeah.
I seem to remember you and Josh Stevens fighting on the roof of June's house with boffer swords.
That was you and Josh Stevens.
No, I was not up on the roof.
I would
Okay,
like
but
to hear the
it
story
was-
from Brian's perspective.
It was with your sword though, because you and Josh made them.
I think Josh made both of them.
Like,
Okay.
it
That was
wasn't
his thing.
it wasn't me, and if it was me, then it was with your sword. That's the way this is going down.
I know it definitely wasn't me because I was always too nervous to be up on the roof.
In my defense, I've sword fought on top of a lot of things. So but there are still people today who their idea of LARP is modern clothing, throw a cheap cotton tabard over it, and go to a park and whack each other with foam boffer swords, and then online call themselves a sword master.
Sure.
Those are the people that I kind of refer to as boffer bros.
Okay.
And for the longest time, that was my idea of LARP. And I will admit, it was an unjust, unfair assessment for the most part. There are some out there who prove that to be true, but most are not that. I do have friends who are involved in LARPs in the DFW area. They play in both worlds. They play in the LARPs, they play in the SCA. Very cool, very wonderful people. And that's when it really started to soften, was when I met the people. And I'm like, okay, they're doing a type of reenactment. Their game's just different than mine. And I should not have been so harsh because they just do it in their own different way. It brings them happiness. It brings them joy. That's what's important. And I also started finding out more about some of the European LARPs. And over in...
It's like Sweden, isn't it?
Are you
Where they
thinking?
go
Are you thinking of the
whole hog?
Nordic LARPs?
I'm thinking of like the Nordic LARPs. I'm thinking of the ones in Germany, France as well. There's one called Methodia. LARPs are actually huge in Western Europe.
Mm-hmm.
The level of detail that they go into in their storylines, in their costuming, in their weapons, and their rules is phenomenal. Do like just a simple Google for European LARP and some of the images that you'll see of the stuff that these people come up with. I talked earlier about making things that are a labor of love. That is taken to a huge degree over there. Some of the costumes, the garb, the weapons, and more, that they have beautiful and wonderful craftsmanship. And you have to give credit where credit is due. There's also one up in Canada. They have a huge week-long event at a place called Bicoline that just looks like a blast. Recently, I found out about a LARP in Greenville, South Carolina area that started up a few years ago called the Weekend Warrior Experience. It's headed up by a group called Felon Fair, and they have kind of brought the whole European LARP mindset and aesthetic to the U.S. What were you going to say, Brian?
You might spell that because it's not felon as in criminal.
No, F-E... Fell and Fair, F-E-L-L and Fair, F-A-I-R. They have a storyline which has been ongoing for years. The world is made up of 4 different factions. There are the Sea Lords, the Kingsmen, the Rangers, and the Hearthguard. And then in the last year, they've introduced a 5th faction called the Order of Luminos, which is the smallest. Go check out weekendwarriorexperience.com. It's fairly cool stuff. I love the look of the weapons, the armor. They do use like the foam injected latex weapons. They do have like standards and requirements. You have to look a certain way, join one of the factions. No jeans and tennis shoes allowed. This looks like a lot of fun. I love the progressive storyline. I love the fact that even a first-time player can contribute to it overall.
That's kind of cool, because I was thinking that it was going to sound like a not your entry point, but it can be your entry point.
Mm-hmm. So I might actually give it a go. I might actually try to go to their 2022 game. They've got it scheduled for October. I don't know. I'll see.
Yeah, I kind of want to get back to this initial reaction that we had to, LARP. And it's something that I've done myself, like, in loving, joking way. Like, Kaja's working on her doctoral thesis, and it's not going to get into the huge details, but a lot of it is bringing in or centered around Japanese theology. And, after she finished her first paper, I said, your fellow is going to read it, and it's just going to have one comment at the top that's going to say weeb. But I mean, and it's because there does seem to be this way that nerds call other nerds. Almost like there's a stratification. Like, oh yeah, I'm into this, but at least I'm not into this.
My geeky thing is more acceptable than your geeky things. Therefore, I'm cooler than you.
Right. I mean, it seems like there has to be. I mean, there doesn't have to be, but there is some sort of inclination to othering other geeky hobbies. Like, we're going to treat you just like this other person treated me because they looked down on how nerdy my hobby was. And I really feel like that's something that we could unpack and explore. I mean, perhaps not like in depth in the context of this show. And, because I wonder what it is that makes us want to do that.
Well, I think in the case of LARP specifically, it's a public thing. You don't LARP in someone's house usually, like we do with tabletop role playing, where it's not in a public view. And LARPers have to be extra enthusiastic. I mean, if you're going to put on a costume, go out into the park and smack somebody with a foam sword, you have to be committed to that. And I think in some ways it's like when I say that, I say, "Ah, nerd." It's not derogatory so much as it's a little, like for me personally, it's a little bit of admiration, because it's like, I don't have enough confidence in myself to go out into the park and do that. I would feel so self-conscious. I would, I couldn't. I tell myself I couldn't do it. I think I actually could if I got there and I was doing it, because, I've put on a costume and gone to the Ren Fair, and that's the same exact thing. So I think it's a case of, it is very external, and it's out there for the world to see. It's the same thing with furries. It's like,
yeah,
no, you're wearing cat ears on your head and you're doing it in a public space. It's bold, and it's drawing attention to those of us who traditionally we haven't liked attention drawn to us. And so it's easy to have a reaction to it.
It's definitely a higher degree of geekiness / nerdiness. Like, if you were to put degrees on it, if you were to put a scale on the things that we do, playing Uno, Monopoly, or Phase 10, that's pretty low. Playing a board game like Settlers of Catan, that's a little higher.
Once you're at Warhammer 40K, you're...
Yeah. Then you get to zombies or Pandemic.
Right.
You get to Pandemic, and that's quite a bit higher. And then you move on to role-playing games, and that's quite a bit higher scale. And then you get to LARP. LARP's another jump up.
Yeah.
And,
about on the same level as the campaign for North Africa.
Yeah, I mean,
you got to be committed.
You got to have time and patience.
Yeah, it seems intuitive that there's a scale, but where does that scale come from? And, how do we check ourselves for not, I know that you aren't being derogatory, Brian, but a lot of people are derogatory.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and it's easy for someone to hear something that's not being derogatory and take it in a spirit that it's not meant.
Yeah.
And normalize it for themselves.
Ooh,
in an unfortunate fashion.
Yeah.
And there's also, I won't say a stigma, but there is
like believing any of your lies.
Yeah. But there is something to say, like, oh, what'd you do this weekend? Oh, me and some friends, we got together, we played some board games. We played some Catan and things like that. Oh, very cool. How geeky. Oh, yeah, I've seen those board games at Target. I haven't ever played them, but they look fun. There's a difference between that and saying, oh, I dressed up as a Sea Lord and I sword fought a bunch of people from an enemy kingdom with foam swords and wooden shields.
Like, I've even at some places at work or whatever had said, oh yeah, well, I'm going over to this con, and people like, so do you go in costume or something? Like, there has been the wait, you do that, but do you dress up? Like, you don't seem like a dresser upper person. Are you a dresser upper person? As you're saying, maybe I'm hearing judgment where there isn't any, but even outside the geek community, I feel like there's, I don't know, maybe it is the more commitment that there is there's a different scale, because
I think also the more that's outside of a person's personal experience.
that's probably really fair.
I could tell the level of exposure to nerds among my coworkers when I showed up to a Zoom meeting as Mikhail Andreevich after my Call of Cthulhu game,
Oh my gosh.
having to explain, why am I Mikhail? And some of them were, my immediate supervisor, Fred, flows right off his back because he's a D&D player. One of the producers like, oh. And I could tell on his face, I don't really get that, but whatever.
Do you care about my hobbies or quality of work? Because I'm great at both.
It's interesting about how our talk from geeky hobbies we've wanted to start has turned into the stigma of geeky and nerdy things. As viewed by
Anything that we
others.
can do is change the topic.
Several times, in fact.
But, I mean, if we want to steer it away from that, we can say, well, good on you for LARP, and Sarah Lynn Bowman and everything that she produces is amazing. Go listen to her if you're interested in LARP.
This is also true.
Didn't MinMax?
That was Sarah Lynn
Yes,
Bowman.
Sarah Lynn Bowman.
Yeah, she's been on Saving the Game and in MinMax. All 3 of those episodes are amazing. So,
Was there anything else that anyone has talked about
I
getting
was
into?
Curious about your Nerf painting and modding.
I mean, who doesn't love Nerf guns? I love the fact that we have such a assortment of very cool Nerf guns now that we did not have when we were kids. I don't even remember Nerf guns when we were kids. Do you guys remember anything of what they were like?
they came out like right around the time that we were in college or just moving out of college. So
Yeah.
they weren't really a thing, at least not a big thing. Yeah, I think that they kind of exploded while I was in seminary. Oh, now that's an idea. Can we make a Nerf grenade? Okay, well, let's save that for later. All right.
The answer to that is yes. I have seen it.
I'm terrified and interested. Where may that's awful. Where can I purchase one?
The Nerf guns that we have now are incredible. They're cool. And, there are LARPs out there which use Nerf guns. There's actually one in South Texas called Dystopia Rising. It's a zombie apocalypse style LARP where characters use Nerf guns and are encouraged to paint them up to look very, post-apocalyptic. And looking at that and also looking at Nerf gun reviews on YouTube led me to the discovery of the community of people who modify and then paint Nerf guns. Whether it's changing out the internals of the gun for stronger springs, better parts, or adding 3D printed accessories onto the Nerf guns themselves on the exterior, there's a whole world of it. And it's one that I found fascinating because I don't need a reason. It's just cool.
Just get one of those foam injected knives from the LARPing community and use it as a bayonet on your Nerf gun. Then your destiny will be complete.
I have seen that.
I am so happy that that is a thing.
We actually did a Nerf gun mod and paint. That same class that we built the miniature terrain in. We got a Nerf gun and we modded it to look like this sci-fi weapon suitable for the screen. And if I can find, if I can open it, I know where the files are, but I don't think I have have software that can open it at the moment. I could actually show you some video that we shot of both of those things.
I would very much like to see that.
If I can get it open, then I'll put it on our YouTube channel.
Cool. We have got quite a few Nerf guns in the house now because I have kids. Absolutely none of them are mine. No, none are Dad's. Absolutely not.
The kids?
Yes.
The guns. The guns. Sorry, the guns.
Yes, the guns. None are Dad's. None. No more than 3 are Dad's. As they get older, I'm sure they'll continue to enjoy it. I mean, every once in a while, we'll still have Nerf battles in the backyard. And it's a little hard for the younger ones because some of them, the way that you rack the slide or cock the gun to shoot the dart is a little tough for one so young. But they're getting into it and they still enjoy it. And I thought that, as they get older, maybe the whole world of like opening them up, tinkering with them, and painting them might be something we could do together. There's a lot of things that you can do, and they look crafty and they look fun, and they leave you with a product that, when done right, is unique.
Now, when I was in high school, when I was an idiot teenager, we did have guns that shot plastic pellets, and I did change out the springs in those. And yeah, I did mod it. And yes, it went from barely knocking over, most of the time not knocking over a pop can to, wow, there's my Illinois dialect right there, a soda can, to denting said soda cans. And yeah, when my dad's friend saw that and decided to shoot the pastor in the bottom with it as a joke, and he did not realize that it had been modified, there was a very interesting discussion that happened after that. So easy to modify, sometimes more difficult to live with the consequences. So just a little warning.
I'm sending you guys a link along with painting and modding Nerf guns. There is Etsy is such a dangerous place.
Truth.
So someone had created and shared the STL file to 3D print a working flintlock musket Nerf blaster
Nice.
That is
That's
amazing.
in long gun form, pistol form, and boarding axe form.
You just sent the picture of the boarding axe, and that is amazing.
I want to use this in SCA Rapier.
Oh, that will make so many people so deliciously mad.
I can't use it to block or parry, or it's 3D printed, so it's not going to be strong enough to use as a parrying device. I just want to take it out in the field, shoot it once, and then toss it away.
Fair.
I'm either going to make the marshal laugh, cry, or probably both.
Both, yeah.
Ban you.
People have done worse than that. But if you look at the video, you actually have to cock the hammers to set it, put in a Nerf dart, use the ramrod to push the Nerf dart down and to let the spring back. A several step process, the same as if it were an actual flintlock rifle.
Okay, that's actually kind of impressive.
Which means I would fire it once and I would be dead before I had a chance to load a second Nerf dart. But that's pretty darn accurate.
Yeah.
So I don't know if this will ever happen because I don't have a 3D printer. But if anyone is listening and is around the DFW area and has a 3D printer, I will purchase the STL files. I will purchase all of the filament needed for this. If you would just, help a brother out.
I guarantee that Greg Oswald is going to ping you on Discord over that.
You know what? If he does, I'll buy enough so that he can have one too. Because I just want to show up at fighter practice with this. And I guarantee you, no fighting will get done because everyone's just going to want to take turns shooting each other with it. Now we're all thinking about shooting flintlock Nerf guns.
I mean,
But now I'm just looking at this cannon and wondering how big it is. With that, how would that go on my desk?
Yeah, someone made files.
1/8 scale.
He's got a pirate Nerf cannon as well.
If we were still actually working at work, at like going physically there, I would definitely print one of those.
Do you guys have a 3D printer at work?
No, but one of my coworkers does.
Oh, cool. The thing is, there have been so many times I've really thought, which one of us hasn't thought about getting a 3D printer? That's a whole nother geeky hobby that we could spend so much time on.
That was my gift to my brother for Christmas, actually, helping him buy one.
Oh, very cool. But I don't know what size to get. I know nothing about the world of them and which are the good ones, which are the cheap ones, what size I would need to print the things I want. I've seen them go from $250 to $3,000. I just have no idea.
Yeah, something would definitely take research before making a purchase.
Mm-hmm. Just out of curiosity, what kind did he get?
He told me what it was and showed me the website. AnyCubic was the brand he bought.
Back to Nerf cannons and guns. We've got a bunch of them in the house, and some of them are ones that you can actually go, and there are plenty of aftermarket parts to modify. And of the three I've listed, I think that one's probably the easiest and most cost-effective to get into. I might give it a try.
I had a lot of fun when we did we did a couple actually for that class. And when it's done, you have something that you can play with. So
yeah.
Yep.
Unlike the terrain, which you can't really play with it. It's just there to be photographed.
I would spend hours on terrain getting it just right, and I guarantee you it wouldn't last a single day in my house.
This is why I do my RPGs with whiteboard and dry erase marker. So I can just draw the terrain and say, okay, this is what we've got for the day, and it's done.
Well, does that wrap us up?
I think so.
We didn't talk about embroidery.
Yeah.
It's one of those things that I had thought about embroidery at a couple of different points, partly after watching what some of my friends in the SCA were producing. And I thought, it would be kind of cool to just be able to take designs and say, I could put a subtle, small nod and a wink on my backpack of like a Hollow Knight mask, or, a Triforce, or embroider a Hylian crest. And I thought, like, during the pandemic, still during the pandemic, but to make a pandemic mask and say, man, wouldn't it be cool if I could embroider something on a mask? I don't know if I want a mask that I've poked 1,000 holes into, so we're going to scrap that idea. But it's one of those things that I've just admired the skill and craftsmanship, and to be able to take that into some geeky designs and symbols and just put it on different accoutrements that I thought would be kind of cool. And I almost pulled the trigger on it, and I just kind of didn't. Part of it I didn't want to put on my Amazon wish list, because I'm like, I think some of the extended family might judge that. And my wife has said, no one is going to judge you if you put an embroidery starter kit on a Christmas wish list. And then I heard a conversation that really confirms somebody would definitely judge whether or not I put an embroidery set. Like,
maybe you have like a secondary wish list for the people that you trust wouldn't judge you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mostly me, Kaja, and Joy, because, Brian already called me nerd.
I'm very judgy.
Okay, so to encourage you in that, a few years ago, Joy took up embroidery. She has been really enjoying it. She's learned a lot about it. It's a pretty cost-effective hobby.
Yeah.
She's bought patterns in the store, on Amazon, and downloaded them from Etsy.
I'm thinking there's got to be some overlap between the pixel art folk and the embroidery folk.
Actually, I just sent you a Zelda embroidery file that's available for $2 on Etsy.
Ooh, that's actually kind of cool. I'll put that on an additional layer on a mask. Who knows?
So, I mean, like, all of her embroidery stuff fits into a large zip-up bag. And not like backpack size, much, much smaller. And she just takes it around with her. If we're going to be in the car for a couple of hours, she'll take it, she'll do it in the car, just wherever. And she's really enjoyed it. And, dude, I say go for it. I mean, all it's going to cost you is like the fabric, which is not that expensive, a loop, and spend a few bucks on thread at Hobby Lobby or Michael's, and you're there.
That is a pretty easy entry point.
I mean, $20 and you've got most of what you need.
Fair enough.
Well, guys, was there any last hobbies?
I think I'd want to get bit by a radioactive spider. That always goes well.
If you do, don't follow the Peter Parker method of recovery. Go to a hospital. Don't just pull the covers up and try to sleep it off, okay?
Don't worry. If there is a medical emergency, I will go to the nearest emergency room.
Good. Well, speaking of upcoming medical emergencies, let's go to our zombie apocalypse plan of the week.
I had something completely different planned, but I heard something that you said that just inspired me, James. And I think first that we should do. Yeah. I mean, you see a horde of zombies, Nerf guns. It's working out swell for those LARPers. I say that we just load up with Nerf. There's plenty of ammo. There's no 7-day waiting period to get one. Just load them up and just go nuts on the undead.
And
I'm sure
unlike bullets, if you miss, you can just pick one up off the ground and pop it back in.
That solves so many problems.
Mm-hmm.
And causes so many more. I hope the zombies have Nerf teeth. I think that would only be fair.
I have this vision in my head that not if, but when the day comes that the zombie hordes do descend upon us, there's going to be some people that we know, some boffer bros out there with Nerf guns. And they're not going to be long for the world. I was going to say they're going to go out gloriously, but no, they're not even going to go out gloriously.
Every boffer bro and dojo bozo, like everything that I have learned theoretically and in the confines of these rules in this space, will apply perfectly and when the wheels have fallen off the bus. And then they're getting munched.
Yeah, there's going to be so many yellow belt zombies out there.
And I can think of no better way to close the show than that. I want to thank you all for listening in. Check us out on facebook.com/geekatarms. Of course, at our website, geekatarms.com. And Mike, what's our Twitter?
We are Arms Geek on Twitter.
And as always, from Brian, Mike, and James, be safe, be blessed, and be geeky.
Thanks for listening to Geek at Arms. Music for this podcast was provided by Incompetech.com. For more, check us out at Facebook.com/Geek at Arms. Give us a like and maybe even subscribe to us on iTunes. That would be awesome.